Good evening and welcome to this second of our Facebook engagement sessions on the 2025-2034 long-term plan. And I'm very happy to report that the shows so far have been enormously popular. The first Facebook connection actually outrated Shortland Street. And I'm pretty sure tonight we will do very much the same thing, because we have, in addition to myself, compensating for myself, two extremely talented people. We have the Waitaki District Council's Chief Financial Officer, Amanda Nichols, to my left, and we also have the Commercial and Property Lead, Claire Foster, to my right. And they will actually add erudition and acuity to the conversation while I just burble on. So we're talking about a number of things tonight. We're talking about property, what we're willing to sell and what not. We're also actually engaging or hoping to engage with some of the communities who pay the hall rates, essentially to see if in some instances those communities are actually of a mind to allow the hall to be let go or used for other purposes, on the basis that in some instances there is virtually no or very little use of those halls. So that's an engagement with those particular communities who are ring-fenced and with regard to the funding for their particular halls. We also want to talk about community housing and the future of that and where it should go and how it should be provided. And I would note that I think yesterday's ODT pointed out that very considerable increases in costs have seen the Dunedin City Council decide not to actually increase and enhance one of its major community housing facilities. And I think around the country, councils and other providers are finding a squeeze clear. That would be an issue, wouldn't it, with regard to community housing at the moment, the accelerated costs and the difficulty of actually providing affordable rents with those continual cost increases. Is that a fair assumption?
That's a fair assumption.
So we will be talking about that, and we will be asking you, the long-term plan is asking people how they feel about community housing, the extent to which they want council involved with it in the future, and whether or not they would like to see council retaining all of its properties or some of its properties, and if it's retaining only some, the kind of provider that they might be interested in seeing used for those community housing facilities. And the other issue is there is an issue of equity with regard to the rates and the charges that are imposed on moteliers and others who provide accommodation for visitors to the district, and the fact that those providing Airbnb facilities effectively, in many instances, are not actually confronted with an equivalent additional or alternative or increased rate. I think the motels pay a commercial rate, don't they?
It's all factored into their rates, yeah.
Yes.
They have a higher rate than a normal residential. Yeah.
And the Airbnb ones being residential are essentially they're providing the same service, but they're getting a rating advantage.
Yeah, there's no separate fee charged for having an Airbnb in Oamaru at the moment.
So really what we're asking is whether people think there should be a change. We're not proposing to introduce it this time, are we? We're actually engaging with the community to see what their view is. Yep. And if there is a view that it would be fair and equitable for such a charge to be imposed, then it would be that would be an issue for a future annual plan. Yep. Yeah. I see Amanda nodding, so once, just every now and then, I'm right about something. Whoa, I'll have to have a pill and lie down. Okay, now, I just look, this issue of property is one that the council has put in front of people this year. It'll be in the consultation document. Basically, there's a question, what properties or property are we willing to sell? And there are a number of properties listed as examples for people to consider. The real issue is the need for local authorities around the country to address the pressure from ratepayers nationally and locally regarding rates and the cost of rates and the fact that rate increases, double-digit rate increases, are deemed to be utterly unacceptable, particularly when households, families, mums and dads, parents, senior citizens, tenants in accommodation are all finding considerably higher charges in other areas that are putting pressure on their bank accounts. And that's an issue that I guess looms larger the smaller the council, paradoxically. And let's be clear, funnily enough, this council is both very big and very small. There are 67 district councils in New Zealand, and Waitaki is the 11th biggest. So we're a very big council geographically. And I think we've got, isn't it, the second largest roading network? So there's a lot of costs associated in that as well, isn't there? I think it's the second or the third. But when it comes to the number of people who can pay the bills in the 11th biggest district in the country, we're only 44th out of 67 in terms of the rating base, the number of people who can actually pay the bills. And not only is there a relatively small number of people paying the bills for a large area, but the average income here is lower than it is in New Zealand generally. The average income in New Zealand is $125,424. The average income here is $95,721. And the median income in Waitaki, do you want to explain the difference between median and average?
Median is the middle, average
Yes.
takes the whole
Right. So the median is here in Waitaki is 80,273.
That's
So
household income. Isn't
household income, yes, correct. So this is not a wealthy district. I mean, there might be people who have a good income, but nationally we have a lower average income and a lower median income as well. And the resident survey last year did indicate that, oddly enough, people were overall satisfied with the council's performance. 46% said they were. Overall, in terms of being satisfied, were very satisfied with the quality of services. 48% said they were. Overall leadership, 43% were satisfied or very satisfied. Overall reputation, same figure, 43%. Overall faith and trust, 39%. But then you look at the money figures, the cash side of it. Overall value for money, as indicated in answers in the resident survey, only 33% were satisfied or very satisfied, admittedly up from 24% the year before, but still low. The number of people who were satisfied or very satisfied that fees for other services were fair and reasonable, only 32%, up from 24%. The number of people who were satisfied or very satisfied on how rates are spent on services and facilities, only 31%, up from 26%. And this is the killer, the number of people who said that they felt or were satisfied or very satisfied that rates were fair and reasonable was only 29%, up from 24%. So although people had an overall satisfaction level of 48% with the quality of services, the satisfaction level for rates being fair and reasonable was only 29% last year. So clearly people are not happy about what they are being compulsorily required to pay when it comes to the annual rates bill. And so this long-term plan, and if you were watching the council meeting we had last night, the council has gone into this long-term plan period with budgets which for 9 years aren't balanced. Now, this is an initial this is a starting point, and it was resolved last night by way of vote that although the initial budgets are not balanced for those 9 years, that between us, the council laws and council officers will actually produce balanced budgets over the 9-year period of the long-term plan. But here's the thing. the reason the budgets aren't currently balanced, or one of the reasons, is because people don't like double-digit rate increases, and we have made an attempt to keep rates down and keep rates at a level that we deem to be more acceptable to people. And what that has meant in turn is that in those 9 years, as things stand at the moment, there's a gap between the money coming in and the money that's going to have to go out to do all the things that people tell us they want to do, and the things that the government insists that have to be done, and the standards that have to be improved, etc., etc. So if we're going to balance the budgets for the 9 years of this long-term plan, there's only two ways to do that. Only two ways. We either get more money in or do less. Am I right?
Spend less. Yep.
So earn more or spend less. And if we're going to, and spending less means doing less. So that would mean some services that people say they want and that they are satisfied with, or at least a significant number of people are satisfied with as far as the resident survey is concerned, that would mean that some of those services may be either gone or reduced. So if we do need to earn more, property sales are one of the ways that we can do that. We can look at properties, and the long-term plan does consider a list of them that are included here. 104 Elm Street, 117B Eden, 12AD, Oamaru, 14 Nen, 15 Ewer, 163 to 169 Thames Street. What are those, Claire? 163 to 169. They would be commercial properties, would they? Or
that's residential ground leases.
Oh, residential ground leases, okay. 225 and 227 Thames Street. Look, there's a whole lot here that are listed, and there may be others that people would say, hey, this property, that area, that building, you own it, but it's getting very little use. We would be happy to see that sold in order to support and fund other activities that might elsewise be required to be paid for by rates. So anyway, we're here to listen to you, and we're here to answer your questions. Do we have any questions in as yet? We've got Sonia and Jason and Mandy and Amanda in the background, another Amanda, monitoring the huge number of calls that are flooding in. As I say, we outrated Shortland Street last time, and I think at the moment we're bigger than Coronation Street.
Thanks,
or maybe 3 News.
Thanks, Councillor Hopkins. We've actually just received a couple of questions via the Facebook page, so we've got some other questions that have come through sooner.
Yes.
But I'll ask the ones that have just come through from what you've been, as a result of what you've been saying already, and just some comments that you might be able to discuss as a panel. So there seems to be many vacant long-term properties that aren't currently being utilised or haven't been for years, which seems like a real waste. Would a change in rates for these owners deter them from having it empty and incentivise to lease their properties or to sell them to have a housing market?
So this is the question doesn't relate to council properties.
No,
the person is saying there's a number of empty houses.
Yeah, and could we do something differently with the rates to discourage them for just leaving those houses vacant? Is what they're basically.
This is an issue that's cropped up elsewhere in some of the bigger centres. I know it was a hot topic in Auckland a couple of years ago. Does the Rating Act allow councils to, if you like, impose punitive rates on properties that are empty or not occupied? I'm not aware that. No.
I'm not aware.
No, I'm not sure there's any provision that says. The other thing would be, how would you be? The questioner is right. There are a number of houses that are empty and have been empty for quite some time. But that may be because a parent is now in care, and the children are living somewhere else, and they're not sure if and when either the family don't want to dispose of the property until their parent has passed on, or maybe they're hoping that the parent will come back to the house after a period in care. The difficulty would be to prove that there were, if you like, illegitimate reasons to have an empty house rather than legitimate ones. My instinct is the Act would make that problematic, but I'd be willing to delve into it a little bit.
Yeah, it's not something we're specifically consulting on. It's,
Yeah.
like obviously there's a privately owned properties. The best thing would be for them to contact our service desk, like flick an email in or give us a call if there's a particular property that they're concerned about, because there might be a way that we can get in touch with the landowner.
And I guess to that, if it's not just a specific property that they're talking about, again, they can put through a submission with that idea and that can be considered at a later date. So it's all, great ideas.
Yep.
So another, I guess more of a statement that we've got received, maybe something you can talk to. An Airbnb, and it relates to earlier conversations about the Airbnbs, has 1 or 2 toilets in it. And if it's rented or provided as an Airbnb, the service used doesn't change. Whereas a motel has many toilets and the service is used is much greater for that property unit. Just, I think, sort of saying that that's the rate difference. But any comment to that?
Well, I would be prepared to bet that almost all the motels in Oamaru, at least, would be water metered.
Yep. So
And so, sorry, you go on.
that sort of thing
yes.
is picked up already in the rates charges. So, so if someone does build a unit on the back of their house and a separate unit and is renting that out as an Airbnb, that would be picked up in the rates anyway as a separately used inhabitable unit. So they would be rated appropriately for the water usage and everything. Yeah. So this is a separate charge on top of that, considering a separate charge.
Thanks, Amanda. We've got another question that's come in, and it's something that we are obviously waiting for more information, and we just got a response that's come through online. But the question is, what is the council's expectation on the tenant's next move if the properties are sold and rents are increased? Our housing is in very short supply already, and we don't want to see that demand increase so high that landlords increase rents even more. More specifically, our elderly tenants that are on pension and council flats. And online, we do have Kayla online, who's our housing specialist, and she's just popped in online and said that they're currently examining the availability of other housing options for this cohort, which is part of the next part of this review's consideration. So we're only just starting that social housing review process, and this will continue through to, I believe, September 2026. But they're just saying when we look at considering any option of transferring ownership of the units, we will assess whether other housing providers could continue to offer a similar housing service. So I don't know if you've got anything else.
So that's an answer. That's an answer from our community housing
Yes.
staff member. Claire, do you want? I mean, you've had an engagement recently. I think there were rent reviews for the council properties for the first time in a number of years, as I recall. Although it escapes my memory as to how many years. 3, I think. I'm not sure. Stand to be corrected on that. But you and your team liaised with the tenants and worked through the concerns they had about unreasonable rent increases and so on, didn't you?
That's correct. That was probably before my time, but I believe it was not this year, but last year. They did a very first review in a long
Last year,
time.
yes, correct, yeah.
And brought it back up to more closer to a market value, even though we do offer a discount of 15%. And then they've just recently gone through another rent review process and gone up.
Because the point is that everyone watching, it's not, it doesn't mean we stop doing it, but I think at the moment, Amanda, is it about 12 or more % of the cost of community housing is actually met by ratepayers generally rather than by the tenants?
Yeah, I'm not sure percentage-wise, but typical ratepayer contributes about $20 each year of their rates bill towards the social housing units, and costs are just increasing, and just it's quite hard because council as a provider for community housing can't access a range of other funding, so other communities providers can. Grants and subsidies and those sorts of things. So it's not necessarily about the tenants may not need to move. The rate may not, the market rate that they're paying may not need to change if they're transferred to another provider. That provider may be able to gain subsidies and things that council can't access. So yeah, it's just a question we're putting out there at the moment to see what everyone's thoughts are. It's not necessarily going to happen.
But you see, interestingly enough, this is another area where, over the time I've been involved with as an elected member of council, we've actually seen things that were at one stage, if you like, manageable and self-funding. I mean, when I was first elected, I'm pretty sure that the community housing we had paid for itself. It didn't cost ratepayers generally anything. All of the costs were actually picked up either by the rents or by some financial assistance that may have been provided at the time from central government. Now, like so many other things, that's not the case. And ratepayers are paying for this accommodation that is provided, or helping to pay for it, in addition to the tenants themselves. It's much the same, very much the same in the water area. You know, the huge expenditures that councils nationwide are confronting largely arise from decisions made in Wellington to amp standards up and up and up, and put bluntly, not provide equivalent increases in funding to match the expectations they impose on local government. Go figure.
Yeah, so I guess all of these areas we're looking at today are about making ends meet, really, aren't they? We're trying to stick to our knitting and having a look at these things on the side, like, is social housing the best thing to be sitting within council, or is it best to place somewhere else? Community halls is another one.
Yes.
The usage of them has changed significantly. They used to be able to cover themselves. So I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but you pay a portion of your rates go towards your local hall in your area.
Well, not everyone's doing that, are they? I mean, well, I suppose everyone is actually, including, there will be a hall charge for even for people in Oamaru, won't there? Because there's a couple of halls here. Is that right, Claire?
Sure.
Or is Oamaru the one place that dodges the hall rate bullet?
I am not sure about
Not
Oamaru.
sure about that one.
Everyone pays for
Well,
the
you've
nearest hall.
got the early settlers hall, and there's a couple of others, aren't there?
That's not a community hall.
No.
Those are separate.
Yeah, that's separate.
Yes, maybe Oamaru doesn't. We might have to confirm that later.
Yes.
Yeah, but
But yeah, Airedale, Ardgowan, Owamoko, Dunback, Duntroon, Enfield, Five Forks, Hampden, Kakanui, Karu Hill, Kurau, Lower Waitaki or the Papakayo, Macraes, Mahino, Moreki, Napara, Omarama, Otakaiki, Otamatata, Otapopo, Palmerston Community Halls, Pukeuri, Tokarahi, Totoro, Wainakarua, Waitaki Bridge, Western and Windsor. So those are all halls, and each of those halls has an area around it, and everyone in the area around that hall will be paying an annual amount, normally requested by the hall committee and almost never challenged by council. I mean, most of the times, every year, we get a list of requests from the hall committee saying, can the rate be X, Y or Z? I can't think of any instance where the council said no.
well, I think the committee's best placed to know,
Yes.
so they know what their insurance costs, what their electricity is, all the expenses, all the maintenance bills they're looking ahead for, and then they know how much their hall is utilised as well. So we've got there's a lot of them on that list that are fully utilised and do cover their costs. But yeah, there's a lot. If you look through that list, there's a few that the doors don't open very often anymore. They used to be well used when there was a lot of local schools around them, and community gatherings and things in halls, but it's just not the case anymore. So and there's also a lot of extra rules for those communities. So we manage some of the finances internally in council on behalf of the committees. And so a lot of the conversations we have with them, they're struggling to find a president, they're struggling to find a treasurer or get people to come to the meetings. So it's quite tough. There's a lot of new rules and responsibilities on those hall committees. Yeah. So yeah, we're just putting it out there.
So this is the page. It's it's page. What is the page? It's page 36 of the consultation document. Do you really need that community hall? And you might say yes, of course, hell yes, we do. But you might say, well, look, I can't even remember the last time it was used. And if it is your view, and you're in an area where that answer might apply, then you might say, yep, well, okay, provided if the proceeds of sale And I think the intention would be that the proceeds of sale would go back to the area of benefit,
Yes.
wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. So in other words, it would be used for some other purpose in that hall zone area. If indeed the hall was, the community in that area decided that they were willing to relinquish the hall and use the proceeds from its sale for another specific local purpose or local thing that they wanted.
Yep. Yeah, so just let us know any ideas that you've got. There's a few different things happening around the community. Windsor Hall's a recent example. That hall's been on the market.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so they
Is it sold?
Yes,
I think
I believe
it's
it
in
is.
final stages.
Is it?
I
Yeah,
believe.
final stages. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's moving in?
I had no idea.
Watch this space. It could be an Airbnb.
It could be an Airbnb.
Yeah, so like that's
Might
an
be an
interesting
ice
one.
skating rink, mightn't it?
Could be anything. Who knows?
Strengthen the floor and put ice in and whiz around. Yes,
Pretty cool.
wouldn't it?
But they're looking to
Jason
use,
likes that idea. He's quite
use-
tickled.
to use the funds from that to build
Yeah,
something across the road,
Yes,
a bit
yeah,
newer and easier to maintain.
true.
That the community
Yeah.
wants. So yeah, they've gone around and talked to all of the ratepayers in that district, and and that's what the community wants. So we're quite keen to hear other people's ideas.
Yes, so there's an example where a community said, let it go, but they've already identified what they would like to see the proceeds of the sale used for.
Yep.
And that's really essentially the conversation we're inviting other communities to have. But by all means, tell us, if you live in Palmerston, tell us what you think about the future of the Five Forks Hall. But I'll be candid, we probably would take less notice of the opinions of somebody who's outside the rating area than somebody who's inside it.
In the feedback form, we've specifically
Yes.
asked if they could tell us what hall they
Yeah,
contribute to. Try and make it specific. Do we have any more questions?
No, but I just think we did have one that was sort of talked to earlier, which properties is council considering selling, and I guess with that it's probably a bit of a question as to why are we only putting limited properties on that list? Is there a reason why we haven't put all of our properties on that list? Is there complicating factors or is there restrictions on that? I think would be great to know.
Claire, do you want to?
I'll jump in here.
Here's a hot potato, catch it.
Thank you. Well, in the portfolio that I'm currently managing, we looked at about 136 properties, and what we did is we kind of ranked them, whether they were as an easier sell to no, we wouldn't consider. And at the moment, the not to consider at the moment is the community housing, because obviously that's under review in a separate forum. So we whittled the list down to the current list that you see before you, or that you will see before you when you look at the document. So it's not about we must or should sell these. These are the ones that come with less legislative fishhooks, and there are a lot of ground leases. So, and they're residential ground leases. There's a couple of commercials in there, but we give the leaseholders an option, should it go through council, of course, to freehold the property, which means not only will they own the improvements, they'll then own the land underneath, and it'll be their own home. So that's the reason for the condensed list. We will obviously, it's good business practice for us to be reviewing our holdings all the time, regularly. So this is just a start.
But I think it's important, again, for people to know that the properties the council own cost you as ratepayers a lot of money. I think we spend about 4 million more than we earn on property per year, don't we? Or is it a bit less than that?
Have you heard that figure before?
No.
Well, I'm just thinking about there was a figure because of all the community buildings we own that don't generate an income or a revenue stream, but still have to be maintained, re-roofed, and so on. Our whole property portfolio does cost us more than it earns, but we do have some commercial buildings, don't we, Claire?
We do, not a great deal,
No.
but we do. The idea is that we're going to hopefully turn some of that around as we go through our portfolio.
And there are other buildings that at the moment, and there's been lots of debate about this, but buildings like the RSA building here in Oamaru, that's part of a gasworks reserve, isn't it? That's, oh, well, sorry, that was built after World War II, and the Parliament funded it and allowed the RSA to operate it, and the condition was that if the RSA ever closed down, the building would revert to us. But there are issues underlying it, related to the land on which it's on, and I'm pretty sure it's all part of a little narrow strip of reserve along that section of Itchen Street that's referred to as the Gasworks Reserve, which was something that was passed by Parliament in the 1880s. And to undo these things and to actually make it possible to even consider selling them, not that we necessarily would, but to even consider selling them, you've got to then have a local member's bill, take that to Parliament, that has to be drafted, paid for, debated, and there's probably another 2 years. So that's the sort of issue that Claire's talking about when she's saying some things are easy to deal with and some things there's a lot more hurdles to jump and hoops to go through.
Correct.
I'm correct again.
Yeah, correct again.
Twice in one night. Be still, my trembling heart.
So I think we've covered all the questions that came through earlier. There's just a couple of comments that have been made on the Facebook live station, and I think, it probably just supports everything that we've been talking about tonight, the need to make those rates affordable. One comment has come on and said, make the rates more affordable to community groups, which is why we're doing what we're doing. And the other person has said, my concern with the rates going up too much is that some ratepayers won't be able to afford the increase and could possibly sell their property and move away. I'm really worried about this, and I know the council has to do the rates increase, but I'm still concerned. Got any comments to that?
That's it. I mean, that's the rock and the hard place. And it's not just Amanda and Claire and me who's between the rock and the hard place. It's all of us. It's the community as well. There are no easy choices anymore. There are only hard decisions. And if there was one thing I would beg people to take away from tonight, it's that. There are no easy choices. We have to make difficult decisions. And if you don't want a 10.3% rate increase, and we don't, it's what the draft annual plan, a long-term plan has started with, but I would hope to see it down. But there's only 2 ways to get it down. Do less or find other ways to pay the bills. And property and assets that no one's using, buildings that people don't go into or only go into once in a blue moon, but which we still have to pay and, insure and re-roof it, etc. These are all things that we just need to actually tackle or consider and say, okay, it's on the table. We're willing to talk about it. We're not going to say no, just because once upon a time we might have, because I don't think we've got the luxury of doing that anymore. Amanda's agreeing with me.
So I just have one more question.
3 times, 3!
So I just have one more question at this stage,
Yes.
and that is, just if we charged a fee for the Airbnbs, what would council use that fee for? What could that possibly be used for, the fee from the Airbnb levy?
Yeah, well, that would be something that we'd consider about down the track. Once we've had this consultation, it'll be looked into more about how we levy for that and what it would go towards. But obviously, things that it would directly go towards the tourism sector. It could subsidise social housing. Like there's a lot of areas that we've talked about tonight that it could go towards as well. So yeah, it can be ring fenced, whatever way we want to do it. But
or it could just go into the general rate fund, couldn't it?
yes, it could.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's all stuff that needs to be looked into.
Thanks, Amanda. Well, we've still got a good number of people online, but that's the last of the questions that we have. So I'll...
Right. Did we get any in earlier?
We've gone through all those earlier
Okay.
questions, so I think we've talked to all of
Well,
those.
actually, here is one that I'm not sure, maybe we haven't necessarily covered this one. These are a couple of questions about the halls. What about the rates that have been collected for halls? if we sell halls, who gets the money? So I think I know the answer, but I'll defer to Amanda, who has a breathtakingly high IQ and knows everything about everything.
I think you already answered this one earlier, actually.
Did we?
Because you were talking about, so if we did sell a hall, it would be ring fenced in that area. And that
Oh, I see.
community
Yes. But what about the rates that have been collected?
Yeah, well, it's already in that pool as well. So the committee, so council acts as an agent and gets the majority of these halls. There's 29 of them. There's 5 that council actually owns itself, but for the other 24, we collect the rates and we give it directly to the hall committee. That's their income for the year, and as well as like the user charges, and then they pay their rates and their insurance and all their costs like that. So they manage their own bank account.
And I know
They've already got the cost, income there from previous years, and then any sales and stuff would go to the committee as well, and they would decide within that community how best to spend
And
it.
some halls I know, because we've seen budgets from time to time, where a hall committee in a particular year might ask for quite a substantial rate increase. And in some instances, that's to cover a deficit, so the account's actually in the red.
Yeah, it could be, it could be a big maintenance
Yeah.
project. Like,
And so in those
did a
instances,
significant upgrade.
in those instances, the first thing you do is clear the deficit and then apply the whatever's left to whatever purpose the community in that area had identified as its preference. Now, the other question, what about the hall committees? Presumably, well, I guess if the halls went, the committee would go too, wouldn't it? Right. Oh, I'm getting a signal from the other Amanda. This is an
Well, we do
additional
have a
question.
new question that's just
Yes.
come through as well. So what is the timeline, going back to the property discussion, what is the timeline for any property sales? In particular, is there a timeline for the ones where someone has already shown an interest in purchasing that property?
Well, I'm not sure if that particular presumption that somebody's shown an interest applies in the case of the properties that we've gone through or that are included in the list.
There wasn't there like the ones you were talking about before, where we own the council owns the land, and then
Yes.
there's a tenant on top
Yes.
and a building on top.
Yes.
So I guess consultation will go through this process over the next month, and hearings and deliberations, and then we'll hope to make our final decisions on the long-term plan, lock that in on 24th of June.
Yeah.
And then as soon as possible after that, I guess you'll start engaging with
In theory, we'll be
interested parties.
starting on 1 July.
Well, we've identified two options with regard to property. Option A is the status quo, don't sell. Option B is test the market. And the plan, because audit says we have to say this, the plan says that our preferred option is to test the market. And I'll read what it says in the consultation document on page 35. Option B, our preferred option, test the market with a view to sell all or some of the properties. Let us know if there are any you wouldn't want to sell. Due to the uncertainty of achievable market value, benefit from sale of property has not been modelled in our current financial forecast. So what we're saying is we haven't put any numbers in the budgets predicated on what we expect to earn from the property sales, because that's pretty uncertain. That's pretty prudent, isn't it? You wouldn't let us put those numbers in, would you?
Who knows when?
But you wouldn't, you'd say no. You'd say, no, you're not going to do that, you naughty
Not until
councillors.
we have certainty about when and sort of idea of how much we would sell them for.
Yes, you would get into trouble. No morning tea.
So we do have another question that's come through regarding the Airbnb topic. So my concern is that if you charge a levy on Airbnb rentals, that the cost will only need to be on charge to the guest, which will risk less visitors and less tourism to the Waitaki area. And that would result in no win-win for anyone. Is there any comment to that?
Well, tell us, that's what we're saying. There's a page dealing with Airbnbs, and we're inviting people to submit on that matter. What about Airbnb accommodation? That's on page 40. Are we getting long-term benefits out of short-term rentals? Do you think council should charge a commercial fee on properties used for private holiday accommodation? Now, we're open-minded. I mean, I know a lot of people think that consultation is pro forma and we've made up our minds in advance. I do assure you that's not the case. But in this instance, there is a clear distinction between the way motels and moteliers are treated and the way people who are providing a very similar service in a residential property, in other words, an Airbnb owner, are treated in terms of the rates they have to pay. The question is that fair? Should it change? Now, we're entirely agnostic on the matter, or not entirely agnostic, but we would welcome, I mean, the very fact that we're asking the question indicates that we're looking at it as a potential source of revenue that hasn't been tapped into as yet. But it may well be that the person who's made the comment that Amanda has just read out, the other Amanda, the invisible Amanda, it may well be that that's the overwhelming response we get to the question, which will influence our thinking.
The last thing we want to do is decrease visitors' numbers. It's not really about that, and
No.
it's not even about income generating. It's about the fairness, like that you talk about the motel and hoteliers, and also there's a limited availability of long-term rentals in Oamaru. Like people that move to Oamaru really struggle to get long-term rentals, and so we're just conscious that maybe some of those properties that traditionally would have been long-term rentals could be held up in Airbnbs. So we're just trying to get the right balance. So hoping like it might incentivise for the market to fall in the right.
Yeah, Amanda's made a very good point, and I should have thought of it earlier myself, because it has been, we have discussed it at council meetings around the council table, and if anyone's been tuned in to some of those rating hits, you'll have seen that conversation unfold as well. But there is an issue with rental and long-term rental, and it is possible that a significant, because there is now a quite significant number of Airbnbs nationwide, not just here but everywhere, and it is an issue nationwide that there may be, to some extent, the shortage of rental properties or the lack of availability of affordable rentals is at least potentially influenced by the number of Airbnbs that have proliferated nationwide. Proliferated, what a good word.
That is a good word.
So we're quite like to hear your
Proliferated.
thoughts on that. So yeah, it's a really good point that they make, and there will be definitely divided opinions on
Yes.
this. So we're quite interested to hear what the public has to say.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. We do have another question that's come through. So what areas use the most council resources? I understand that it is roading and water. So realistically, what impact will the sales of property achieve on council expenditure?
Well, okay, right. The top three, and again, it's in the consultation document, 30-something percent, 31% of all the rates collected are spent on, it goes to fund water. 19% of the rates collected go on roading. And I was quite surprised, not entirely happy to see 16% on democracy, accountability and planning. Now, there's a whole lot of things in there, but that's a quite significant percentage of the total rates bill. And the other one, arts, culture and community, is 9.6%, nearly 10. Heritage, environment and regulation, 6.7. And parks and recreation, that's another biggie, if you think about it, 11.6. So nearly 12% of all the rates district-wide go on parks and recreation. And, you know, parks and recreation, roads, get back to basics, says the government. What's a basic? Is a park more basic, less basic than a road, a footpath? No wonder we toss and turn at night. Don't be clear, we toss and turn at night.
Mandy, what was that?
So I guess the last bit to that question was, realistically, what impact will the sales of any property achieve on actually that council expenditure?
Well, okay. Pardon me. Bear in mind that we've got a sports and event centre that the council has agreed to a loan fund to the tune of $10 million. But the council has also, as a consequence of an annual plan 2 or 3 years ago now, also agreed to actually increase its total contribution. The total bill is 30 mil plus. And the council has said that it will contribute 15 million of that, but it has also said that 5 million of that 15 million will not come from rates. So there's one answer, one potential answer to the question posed that you've just read out. That property sales might be a source of some or all of that 5 million.
And I guess when we look at the overall council picture, you talked about earlier about not balancing the budget.
Yes.
So in some of the years we might have a $5 or $6 million loss in some of the years of the 9-year plan. So that would just bring it back to break even. So yeah, so like I think the list of properties there was about 6 million. So if we could sell the whole list, that more than covers that deficit that year.
Yeah.
So every little bit helps.
You're right there?
Thanks, team. So we have another question here. Do you actually, and this is going back to the Airbnb topic, do you have the numbers of Airbnbs in the region and the demand for long-term rentals? Or is it pie in the sky guessing without quantification?
No, that's something we don't have the detailed information on Airbnbs. This is really early stages. It's something that a lot of other councils around the country have looked into, extra charges for Airbnbs and things. Yeah, it happened in Queenstown a few years ago. Obviously, it's a completely different market to us, but we still do have quite a lot of visitors, so it's something we need to consider.
I don't think.
Yeah,
look,
I
I don't think anyone necessarily. I can't think of any local authority around the country that would have an absolutely accurate inventory of Airbnbs.
It's quite a tough one.
Because you'd need to spend quite a lot of money actually scouring all the available websites, and even then, the Airbnb might be marketed in a totally invisible way. And the point that Amanda was making before is one that isn't particular to us. It's not pie in the sky. There is some speculation nationwide that the uptake of Airbnb properties, or the evolution of the Airbnb market as part of the accommodation, or one of the accommodation options open to people, has taken out of the supply chain some properties nationwide that would have been used previously, that are likely to have been used previously for long-term rental accommodation. Now, that's not pie in the sky, but equally, beyond identifying it as a potential reason for, well, one of the potential reasons for a rental property shortage, I don't think anyone in the country has quantified that. So I'm sorry if that answer doesn't satisfy the questioner, but I don't think raising the fact that it's an issue is pie in the sky.
No, and to that, thank you for that, team. To that, we've also had online our housing expert who said, regarding Airbnbs in the region, in 2020, research found that there were over 260 Airbnb listings across Waitaki. The district has more than 10 Airbnbs per 1,000 residents, which is actually significantly higher than it is for Ashburton and Timaru that have around 4 Airbnbs per 1,000 residents. So we've got many more here in Waitaki. And then a comment that one of our other online listeners made about that same statement was that there's actually only 14 rentals available in Oamaru at this time, with a huge variety of rentals and sizes of those housing available, when it just doesn't work for everybody. So, affirming that we do have a problem here for our...
So the wisdom of crowds has come to our aid. That's interesting. So thank you to the people who've actually provided that information.
So then
Just
we've
goes
got...
to show the mixed views, that isn't it? So we're interested to hear everyone's opinion.
Yeah.
So then we've got another comment that's just a question that's been raised. If community housing rents were raised to higher levels, would tenants qualify for government assistance, for example, an accommodation allowance?
They do anyway, but I'll let Claire answer that. If rents went up, would the tenants qualify for government assistance or allowances?
Oh, I think it's all individual. So they would be applying individually, and yes, some would definitely qualify.
What would be the reasons that they might not?
But usually it's down to if they have any, comes down to money in the bank, because a part of our policy is that they have to have less than $20,000 in the bank. So that's all taken into account for any kind of benefits. But if you've got zero in the bank or very little savings, then yes, you'll qualify.
And I don't think we've got any other questions at the moment. I think that's the lot for now.
Well, I think we're planning to conclude this particular Facebook session at 8 o'clock. I think what I would say, just wrapping up, I would just make the point that I personally believe, and I think, Amanda, I think I heard you sort of murmuring agreement previously when I said that we've run out of easy options, or there's only hard choices now. And would you accept that as a fair presumption for councils nationwide, maybe even the whole country?
Yeah, I think you guys getting to that point.
And I think all we are doing is putting on the table some of the means by which we can address the fact that we've got to make some tough choices. And basically seek from you signals as to what are the hard choices you would prefer us to make. It's as simple as that. Or what are the hard choices you yourselves are ready to make. I go back to the resident survey and the view that the fact that only 29% of the people surveyed, the survey was presented in September of last year, only 29% said that rates were fair and reasonable, or were satisfied or very satisfied that rates were fair or reasonable. Well, if you don't think rates are fair and reasonable, help us find other ways to pay the bills, or accept the fact that we'll have an annual plan one year that says, oh, we're not doing this anymore, and see that park over there, well, we're not going to mow it at all, or whatever. You know, there's a debate about that happening in Dunedin right now, if you follow the ODT and the issue of mowing and so on. Councils nationwide are confronted with these really difficult issues. And I know we are deemed at times to be profligate and extravagant, and you know, individual people can criticise individual decisions of individual councils all day long, and you know, you'll probably find individual councillors would agree with some individual people about some individual decisions. But councils are like parliaments. There's a majority of people who cast a vote, and at that point the decision is made, the die is cast. So I'm not rambling, but what I'm saying is around the country there is, I think, a sincere and genuine attempt to kind of rein in council spending. I noticed the other day that I think the Hong Kong Savings Bank was identifying rates and insurance as two of the contributing, or the two most significant contributors to the ongoing internal inflation in New Zealand. And it appears to be the case in some other countries as well, but certainly here. And I think councils are aware that it can't go on as it has, and communities are telling councils that it can't go on as it has. So our long-term plan is about finding new ways to keep going on. You know, the mayor and other people, I think even the president of local government has said the rating system's broken. Well, in that case, we've got to build something different. We just do. You're nodding. Well, if this was a real TV program, we'd cue the applause machine would be kicked in by now, and we'd be rolling the credits. And
Well, before we roll those credits, we do have another question that's come through.
Right.
So just one person's put out there, what are your thoughts about setting off any capital return to invest in the rebuild of Beach Road?
Well, perfectly reasonable. Look, that was a heated debate last night at the council meeting. Again, there's an option B there on page, I think, 31 of the document that is identified because, in fact, again, audit insisted that we had to have preferred options for everything. But with regard to Beach Road, I think it's page 31, sorry? Yeah, option B, close the road. Now, that's identified in the document as our preferred option, but it was made clear by councillors last night that that's not our preferred option. And I would encourage people to have a look at the document because there are three options. One is realign the road, and there's an illustration in the document showing how that could be done. So the road would basically go just around on existing road reserve around the westward of the big extraction areas where all the fly tipping has been removed. So that's one option. Another option is close the road entirely, and a third option is would be to close that section and close this section and realign the Awamoa, central Awamoa connection and carry on down to Kakanui. So tell us, there are strong views about this road, always have been. Every time it's been a topic of discussion and debate in annual and long-term plans, people have been passionately advocating for its retention on any basis. It must be done. It's a unique stretch of road. Some say, others say it's a cost that the council and the community can't afford, and we have to accept the inevitability of erosion and nature gobbling up its coastline as and where it will. So there are genuinely, sincerely held, but very strongly held and passionately held views in both directions. We want to know which of those three options people prefer, and we will respond accordingly. And yes, it may well be that the council would decide if there was a view that property sales could help contribute to one of those outcomes, if that was the preferred community, if that was the one the community signalled was their preference, then we could absolutely decide to do that as part of the long-term plan decisions, couldn't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Well, there we go.
again, just before those credit rolls, we do have one more question that's come in, and this will be the last for the evening. But one person, going back to the community housing discussion and that we were talking about before, and we were talking about the rents, and they just asked, why don't we raise the rents then? This person previously asked if the community housing rents were raised to higher levels, would tenants qualify for government assistance? And we said yes. They said, then why not raise the rents to increase council revenue? Obviously, we have set our social housing rents at 85%, but is there any other comment to that? And I do think there's some that have come through from our housing specialists, but if you've got anything to add from the panel, that'd be great, but I'll just see what we've got online.
Yeah, maybe just see what Kayla says to that one.
Sorry?
Specifically. Kayla's probably best placed to answer that one.
Well, rents went up last year after a period when they had not increased. And I think I said earlier, I couldn't remember how many years there'd been no increase, but I have, in the back of my mind, is the thought that it was 3. It may not have been, but there'd been a significant delay when it had, the practice previously had been, there would be just a smaller annual increase. But then that gap meant that the increase last year was quite a lot more and caused a lot of initial anxiety and concern.
And although they may be able to increase their subsidy, it may not increase to the same level.
Yeah. So, I mean, we need, the questioner is, I don't think the question is presupposing that there would be a government subsidy if the rents went up, or whether the government subsidy would match the rental increase. But we would need to be very careful about any rental increase imposed unilaterally without double checking in the first instance what assistance by way of government subsidy might be.
And to that, we've had some comment come through from our housing specialist online, and she said that the accommodation supplement is capped, so that's something that we have to take into consideration. But we are actually looking at increasing the rents as part of the review that we are aiming to complete by September 26, and as part of this feedback that we get through the long-term plan. It's not necessarily a dollar for dollar increase, i.e. if your rent goes up by $5, it doesn't mean that your accommodation supplement would also go up by $5. So that's why we're not rushing into this. That's why we are taking our time. That's what our housing expert online has said as well. So, yeah, we've just got to make, the rent increase may not still be enough to cover the costs of maintaining those housing units by councils. So that's also something we've got to take.
But what's interesting about that information is that clearly our rents at the moment are below the accommodation supplement cap, because I can't imagine our housing specialist saying that we're contemplating a rental increase if it went through that or breached that cap. So some comfort there. It's after 8 o'clock. In theory, I know you've got. What are you doing tonight? Aren't you building a skateboard park for?
How did you know?
For newcomers to the district, and you've got community
balancing the
work.
budget.
You've got community work. So, you want any closing comment, Claire?
Thank you for having me here, and hope the audience out there has got some useful information to give us some submissions.
And some strong opinions,
Yes, absolutely, all of it.
Yes. Amanda.
I guess, yeah, so the details all in the consultation document. Check out our website. Everything's up there today. Lots of links to more detailed information. There's the brief in the consultation document, but you can click links behind to hear a bit more about the properties and things as well. Yeah, so get your feedback to us. I guess anyone listening, hall committees and residents and things like that, feel free to get in touch if you've got individual concerns as well.
Absolutely.
Now, just mainly, we've got three invisible people here, Sonia and Jason and Amanda, whose voice you've heard but you haven't seen. They've been absolutely integral and essential, and thank you for your contribution. In addition to the consultation document, which is a reasonably sizable, it's 60 pages, about 20 of which probably can be attributed to audit. Those wonderful people. Isn't it funny how bureaucrats can advise politicians in Parliament?
Time, Jim.
I don't care, I'm just going to say this anyway. Isn't it funny how bureaucrats can advise politicians in Parliament and bureaucrats can dictate to politicians in local government? Anyway, that's got that off my chest, but I see Sonia nodding. But Amanda, we're going to produce, in addition to 60 pages, there's going to be some public meetings, aren't there? And there's also going to be a smaller 2 or 3 page or 4 page document and an advertisement appearing in the Oamaru Mail as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. So in next week's, not this week, but next week's Oamaru Mail edition that comes out, there'll be a wrap around that, which is the summary CD document, and that'll be on the outer wrap as well as a couple of pages on the inside, and that'll have a really brief feedback form which you can either fill in and drop back to us, or you can get online again.
That won't be the whole 60 pages.
That is just this real refined sort of an 8-page summary wrap. We'll also be having some of those to take around. We're doing some fit stops stations where we're just going to be promoting the LTP, an opportunity to make our community aware of it, that those that aren't already, and also just a chance for people to come in and actually talk to them and ask a question if they've got any. We've got some community Q&A sessions. We've got 5 of those around the district, and we'll be doing a bus trip around the Ahuriri to discuss the LTP topics in that area as well. So we're really trying to get out there and get in front of the community. So that all started with our first Facebook session last week. We've got another Facebook Live session next week, same time, same place. So we've got 5 weeks of the Facebook Q&A. We've got 5 community Q&As. We've got about 12 different fit stops. We'll be at the AMP talking to people there, and we'll be around the district. So we really hope to hear from everybody. It's really important to what we do ahead.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Amanda Nichols. And thank you, Claire. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you found it informative. I hope it has persuaded you that our long-term plan has been produced with the clear intention and hope that we will get your views, and that having received them, we will consider them and actually factor those into the decisions over the next 9 years. But as I say, have a look at the document, either the 60 pages information online, the information will be appearing Friday week in the Oamaru Mail, or the wraparound with the Mail. Go to the meetings, and let us know what you think about the issues we've discussed tonight and the other issues. Oh, one other thing, Amanda, what's next week's Facebook session?
Next week's Facebook session is about the options and opportunities for our penguin colony and Tourism Waitaki, looking at what we can do to let those two companies, stand alone let the penguins stand on their own little blue feet, and let's see what we can do with Tourism Waitaki and another way to bring more to Waitaki and get the best for our community, whatever that may look like. So,
Yes.
a really interesting topic to get some feedback.
So we're asking, we'll be asking, this is in connection with the penguin colony and how it might be able to be work better for the environmental and ecological purposes for which it exists, and also perhaps as an engine room for economic development. And who's going to be hosting that one?
So that'll be hosted by Mayor Gary Kircher, supported by Dr. Philippa Agnew and Mr. Alex Palmley, our Chief Executive.
Right. So that'll be a good one. That'll rate nearly as well as the one has tonight. 3 more superstars. Well, 2 superstars tonight and a bloke. Thank you very much. Good night.